Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to the VVA podcast. My name is Leila Resme.
And I'm Cristina Tumino.
And today's episode is episode number 3, entitled Expressing Ideas, Part 1, Connection and Communication.
Yes, so today we're talking about why we communicate. We communicate to express ideas, as we said, or to connect, but as well to learn. And in the previous episodes, we were talking actually about having a new idea, the conception of the full of this new idea and how to manifest it in the world. But I think communicating the idea is very important too. Otherwise it cannot be successful. So if people don't know about the idea, how can the idea itself be successful?
Yes, exactly. So whether it's in business or any creative venture we're doing, even in personal relationships with people, we need to be able to express our ideas so that they can actually go somewhere, because if we just keep them to ourselves, they just stay where they are.
Yeah, they do. And I think expression, like if we look at it in some way, expressing something is about involves a lot of your personality and your uniqueness, because it's your way to kind of say your own truths, your own ideas, thoughts, and everything. So it normally is kind of different for every person, because it involves your personality and the way you want to communicate or express or build a relationship, or I don't know, express your needs, etc.
So, exactly. And there's so many different ways we do it as well, because we do it verbally, we do it via body language. We can do it for like creative endeavors and stuff. So there's like loads of different ways we actually communicate. So it's not just verbal communication.
Yeah, no, it is. And actually, I think it's quite important, because we don't even realize that when we are talking, well, for instance, me, I know that I use a lot of gestures when I talk myself. And we don't realize sometimes when we are talking that we express everything, we use everything when we talk. And I think children actually can, they learn this first since they're very young, because they can see, they just don't just look at the words you are saying. They don't even understand the words. For them it's more like a kind of singing like a tune or something, because they don't really understand. But what they very observe and look at is the expressions of your face and your body and your hands. And if you are upset, even if you're trying to say something in a certain way but you're actually upset, they will understand that, they will pick that, because our body is expressing that. So
we actually communicate more than we realize sometimes, because sometimes we might have things going on inside of us that we might not even be aware of, and some other people might be picking up on it, and they will have a response based on what they're picking up, and we might be confused because it's like we haven't said anything to that person, yet they are reacting to the body language signals we are sending them. And also connection is really important when it comes to communication, because one of the main reasons why we communicate is to connect with others.
Yeah, as human beings, as a species, kind of, we actually need to connect to people. We cannot live in isolation. We actually go crazy. We need to communicate. And you can see this since we are little. I mean, I've done studies on child development. And this is one of the first things that's quite fascinating, because the first 3 years of life, children are very egocentric. Everything is about them, because they don't understand that the other people can have needs too. Everything is about them. Around that age, they start to learn and understand about empathy and socializing, and that's when they start to have to say like, oh, this is my best friend, and all this kind of stuff. And this is because we need to connect. We need to belong, and there are actually some techniques. I don't remember the names at the moment, but where children start to imitate the other person to feel part of the group. And they start to copy each other's words, or if somebody's laughing, they laugh too, but it's just to be like, okay, I want to be part of this, whatever it means.
Like a tribe,
yeah,
in a way.
Yeah. I mean, it can be, I think it's important, but I think something that can happen, though, when we try to be part of a group, in my experience, is that we can, by trying to do that, we can lose our individuality sometimes, because the wish, the desire of being part of the group in some way makes, and to be, how do you say, like the people will...
it silences your own uniqueness, right? Because you just follow what everyone else is doing without actually expressing your own unique self.
Yeah, because you want to be accepted, you want to be exactly. So maybe if everybody's saying, oh, this is cool, and you deeply inside think, oh, this is, for me, it's not really cool, but okay, I lie as far so I can be in there, in the thing, I will say, oh yeah, it's cool too, everybody's dressing one color, oh, me too. So all these kinds of things, they can actually in some way, depending on the situations, but I think we need to be careful, because sometimes we lose that.
Yeah, I think that really has to be balanced out by creating opportunities, especially for children, to be able to express themselves uniquely and not be afraid to do that, and not just to follow everyone else. But also, as you were talking about how like children develop, that made me think about how, maybe you can answer that, maybe you've seen, you know, some examples of that, how different children respond to like online and virtual connection with people, and actual personal face-to-face. Can you see like a difference?
I think, for me, well, I think there is a big difference between face-to-face connection and communication, and when you are like online virtual communication, especially when you have lived like for half of your life in an
non-virtual world.
Virtual world, and then you actually live, so you kind of see the two sides and the difference. And and I think is the virtual kind of communication is, I mean, it has its positive aspects, of course it has, because I mean, nowadays I can talk to my family in South America whenever I want.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, not when they're sleeping, but of course whenever I want. So we can talk to anyone in any time. It's like we're breaking that barrier of almost, I mean, geographically for sure, and sometimes even of time, because it's just in that moment and you can talk to that person, and that's great. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing, especially as more and more people move around the globe, and you know, there's a lot of that going on, and we don't see our families. And obviously with everything that happened during, you know, the COVID, everyone was kind of, you know, stuck in their homes, so obviously that was a great thing. But I think going through that time and only having that as a tool to communicate has probably proven just how little it actually gives us in comparison to face-to-face connection and communication with people.
Yeah, so when children, like you were talking about, you were asking me about children, children, in fact, they're not very good at virtual communication. Like if you talk to a child, like on FaceTime or Facebook, or sorry, not Facebook,
like
Skype or anything, or WhatsApp, they're not interested in that. It's like they lose interest. They cannot really engage for a long time in front of a screen.
That's so interesting.
They're interested in being engaged in doing video games and all this stuff, but not in the communication, because children are very sensitive to the presence of the person. It's like you actually don't realize, but when like people that are looking at us now, they just see this side of us. They don't know how actually tall we are, or I don't know, what are we wearing underneath, or what kind of energy we spread in some way, what kind of energy we shed. Like they cannot feel this, they cannot sense this. And that's so important.
There's a lot of kind of safety things going on there. I remember I watched, I don't remember what it was, but it was an interview with someone that specializes in this kind of communication. And basically what was said is that when we meet someone on Zoom, because we don't necessarily see their hands, we don't know whether this person is safe to be around, because in, you know, like when we were in caveman kind of world, then we would need to see someone else's hands in order to make sure that they don't have a tool. So I'm guessing this is why like waving and like handshakes come into place, to show that there is no weapon in our hands.
Makes sense.
So apparently it's really important when you start a Zoom meeting with someone to just like give them like a wave, just to and subconsciously it will make you more likable, because you will signal that you are safe to be around. So that's really interesting as well. There's a lot of things, even the slight delay that we don't actually perceive has an effect on how we communicate and how we perceive the other person. So all these different things come into play when we are communicating with someone online, which obviously we don't have any of these issues in real life.
I think it's important. Like even when you go, I don't know if it happens to you, when you go into the tube, like in the tube underground, I don't know if it happens sometimes. I like to look at the shoes that people are wearing. I don't know if it happens to you because I don't know, they give you an idea as well of their styles and how they behave. I don't know.
There is a saying, I don't know whether, I know in Poland there's a saying that if you want to know a person, look at their shoes.
Really?
They're wearing, and that will tell you everything about a person.
Well, yes, I don't know. I really I didn't know about the saying, but I like to look at people's shoes. I like shoes, but it's not because of that. It's just by analyzing. I look at the shoes first, and then I look at the face, and I'm trying to think like, I don't know, it's a bit like round, or it's very like everyday, and I know that depends on the occasion. We wear different kind of shoes, but I found it interesting. So you miss all this stuff. When you are online, you miss all these little details. Everybody will look at something. Maybe somebody will look at the hands, somebody unconsciously will look at the eyes, like how the intensity in some way of the eyes, and I don't know.
There is none of that. There's none of that online, is there? You can't.
And sometimes when you talk. And sometimes when you talk, I mean, this is, I don't know if this is a very South American or Italian thing, but I tend to touch people as well when I talk. So it's my way of saying like, oh yeah, I'm here, I'm with you, I'm listening, or I'm connecting.
Also signals connection.
So and you lose all this. So I think it's quite different. I mean, it has all these amazing positive sides, but it can have very negative sides. To don't even mention social media and communication on social media, because that's even another thing. It can be amazing for businesses and for, again, communicating and sharing thoughts and ideas. But I think often what happens in social media is not so positive as
it's kind of like an imaginary world, isn't it? And we end up prioritizing that imaginary world over our real world, so we will be sitting with friends, and all the friends will be on Instagram, and we end up not having any real connection with the people we're actually around, and we just focus solely on this virtual reality. That's really, I mean, it is real to a sense, but it's not, everyone always posts their best moments, and like the best versions of themselves on Instagram. And we can, so in a way it's not real, it's not real, it's just one side of reality, and a lot of people pretend on there anyway. So
yes, I don't think for instance, in my book I actually write as well about because can you imagine, I talk about this because can you imagine a child that doesn't know any difference, okay, and the more and the earlier they are exposed to this, although social media platforms have these rules where you have to be at least I don't know, 13 or 16 years old. Some children start to use them earlier, and of course if they see their parents doing it, they will try to do it as well, because it's normal in some way. And I think we don't realize how very bad it is when a child doesn't know any difference and just believe that everything is, that's the way it works. So it's like having 400 selfies to choose the perfect picture to put on Instagram so everybody can look at it. And you are amazing in that way. And you need to keep that standard as well. Or the amazing family, that way you see there's so much love in that family. So everybody is like trying to keep that. And can you imagine a child living to that kind of standard when in reality of like perfection, when reality, perfection doesn't exist. We actually are beautiful the way we are with our imperfections. We cannot have perfection. And for a child to be knowing just this reality, I think what creates is very like dark holes in some way. Because it's more about trying to always
what something looks instead of what it really is.
Yes, to be
it's
always
just this appearance thing. And I've actually done an experiment for a whole month.
Yes, I know you have, about Instagram, right? To be
yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually what I know that you decided to be away from Instagram for some time.
Completely, yeah. So it was, I set myself a whole month and I didn't log in a single time, not to view any messages, not anything. And basically I wanted to see how not being on an Instagram is actually going to affect me. How is it going to affect my work? Is it going to affect it at all? How are things, because you know there's always this pressure that we need to be on Instagram, we need to be on social media because it helps our business, it helps our work and you know our communications. We don't want to miss out on what our friends are saying. Are we going to be lonely if we don't have Instagram? So I wanted to put all of this to the test, and actually I was really quite surprised because I didn't consider myself like a heavy Instagram user. I would mainly go on it, maybe post like some pictures. If I was at work, I would share some stuff. If I was writing something, I would share that. Maybe some stuff from my modeling work. And I didn't think it was that much. But what I've realized is that as soon as I came off it, my levels of worry and just general feeling down kind of feelings, they almost completely disappeared. And it was just crazy for me because I had this peace of mind. I was very calm. I was happy where I was with my life, even though I wasn't necessarily fully content because we always want to progress. But I stopped looking at things that were wrong with my life. And I didn't realize that I was doing that. So every time I was on Instagram, I was subconsciously thinking, my life is not like this, or my body doesn't look like this. And I would constantly compare myself. And I didn't think I was doing that much. And when I stopped, all these feelings disappeared. So even when it came to
And how long did you say? For a month?
For 1 month, but I could see the results within like 5 days. At first, it was quite hard for me to, you know, just fight the urge a little bit, not to go on it. But once I've done that, it was just amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And just to realize that I'm quite happy with the friends that I have that just actually send me a text or call me, that's when I realized I have real friendships. And sometimes it's like you go on Instagram and you think, all these people have so many friends, and they talk to all these people in the comments or whatever, and you realize that's not necessarily real friendships, because I didn't miss any of that. I didn't miss replying to comments to random people that I've never met. Obviously it is nice, but it's more of like an ego boost, let's be honest.
There is another element, I think, and this is something of like Instagram, Facebook, and these platforms that work in this way. We don't realize that the fact that the way they work, where you the moment you post, you put a post, you upload it, then you have a kind of not expectations, but you are waiting for people to look at it. So you will be engaged to see who's looking at it. And this is something normal will do when we are face to face. Like when we are in front of other people, we're talking, we see how the person reacts to what we say, and then we adjust, or we emphasize our message or anything. And we normally, as I was saying, we like to be liked, because that's what makes us feeling like we belong. So what happens is, the way these platforms work, the moment that you press a like, or you write a comment, they actually kind of release on the person that is reading the thing, release an hormone. I think it's dopamine, the one is called. It's the same one that is released for people that are addicted to, I don't know, alcohol or even sugar, to be honest, because it's a kind of a little hint of happiness. And what happens is that after you get that, you're very happy and excited, and you would like a bit more, and then you get another one, and you get another one, and what it happens is you become addicted. And then when there is no more, you feel empty, like to balance this out, because you had lots and lots and lots, and then you go down, and what happens is that you want more, so you need to go and post something else,
and you chase after it, so it's stuck in that loop of constantly
needed that drug, that kind of thing. And it's exactly the same what happens with sugar, exactly the same that happens with drugs and alcohol and all this stuff. But so we become completely dependent on the system and on this kind of thing, and that is actually very dangerous, I think.
It is,
because, that means that everything you do around that, and then you just want to put, it doesn't matter if it's just because you want to be liked or somebody, or you want to challenge somebody, or it doesn't matter. Often we don't even realize how hooked we are, how we then don't even think. Sometimes, even myself, sometimes I can spend time on looking at videos, and then I don't even realize, and I carry on and I carry on and I carry on, and that's
like 2 hours have gone by, and you're like, oh, I was supposed to be
and that's the perfect that's the perfect thing for these platforms, because the more we're engaged, the more they can promote stuff, the more money they can do, the more they learn about us and how we behave and what kind of data they can collect from us. So then companies, they want to sell their products, they can target properly people they want to engage with. So it's even better than just watching TV, like, when these advertisements on TV.
Exactly. And also another thing, there is so much stuff on there, and there's always this this confirmation bias that whoever you follow, whoever you watch, you will get more and more recommendations based on what you watch. So you will see the world tinted in that way. So this is what I've kind of realized as well, is that when I don't have everyday updates from random people on what is going on in the world, I'm so much happier, because why do I need to know that this is going on? Why do I need to know this and that all at the same time? I really don't, because it's not helping me with my creative work. It's not helping me with my productivity. All it is causing is distraction from my personal goal, and it's creating just so much anxiety about the world and confusion, because one source says this, another source says that, and your brain just, you know, is just so confused and creates that fatigue where you don't even have any energy to do your productive work anymore, because you have just been overwhelmed by all this information that you don't even know whether it's true or not.
No, and it can be quite manipulative as well.
Yeah, exactly.
They can, because they understand how you think or what you think, they can choose as well what to put there available for you to watch or to see. And and newspapers are actually famous for this, because of course only bad news are the ones that can engage people more, because if it's not a bad news or like some kind of drama or something very big, it's not a news. So who's going to read the newspaper if you're talking about a gardener doing something? Maybe that's the people that are interested in gardening, but that's not like who that something happened. So
I think most people by now already know the dangers of watching news and constantly taking in the negatives of everything. But they sometimes forget that we get the same thing from social media. And, you know, nowadays, everyone shares things on their stories and there is no source. There is no real proof that what they're saying is actually correct. And it really colors our perception of the world and can really, you know, just make us feel really confused and unable to see the world as it is. And sometimes when we just take a break and detox and for a moment just do not engage in any news at all, whether it's news from friends or, you know, newspapers, it's still news and it can still be very damaging to our well-being. So this is what I've realized when I came off Instagram for a month, is that I wasn't concerned about the things that everyone seems to be so concerned about, because it didn't apply to what my goal was. And I was able to focus more on that.
And I think it's not about being like that you don't want to know about what's going on around you, because of course you want to know about everything, but it's more about as well having a kind of a break from that. And you choosing what to watch and what to do, because in reality we think we choose, but we don't.
It's really choosing us.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy, but it is, because you carry on being engaged in something that is there, that even if we went to look at something, then it will, I don't know, suggest another thing or another similar topic or something. So you will be so much without even knowing at some point that you are actually fully engaged in something, who knows for how long. And you are not even, like, if you think 1 second, you think, oh, 1 second, but I went to check this. Why am I now on this?
Exactly. So I think that people need to realize that when we think we're going on social media, even just for our business to share something and be kind of like the sender of information, we will inevitably receive information at the same time. So we really need to limit that time, and sometimes taking a month of detox to be able to show us, you know, how much this is affecting us. And then further down the line, actually creating the discipline to only set certain times in the day to use those tools, because they are supposed to be tools. They are not a playground for us to live in. So
or to be used by, because
exactly
we're used by these tools. It's like, and the fact that I know they are for free, although they're not, I mean, they're for free in terms you can have an app and use it. You don't have to pay to use the app. But in some way, of course, the companies, they pay with the advertisements and stuff. But we actually are paying, because we pay with our
concentration
with our details, with our personality, who we are. We pay even with our emotions, our emotional side. we pay with lots of things and dependency and stuff. So it's I think they're great tools, but as far as we are in control, and it's quite hard to realize when you are in control or when
it's very hard
used.
It's very hard. It's actually already quite hard for me. After the month, I have decided that I'm only going to go and use it as a tool and only do it very sparingly. But I can already catch myself scrolling, you know, I'm in that rabbit hole of scrolling and I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing this again. I don't want to do this. So
and the point is that everybody's in there. So you think, okay, if you want to do certain things, you have to use it in some way, especially in business. Or if you're promoting, again, a project, an idea or something, you have to use it. But I think the more you become aware and you try to be in control, the better it is.
Yeah, the discipline with this is so important. It's so important.
Yeah. So we were talking about communication, and in some way, communication is, in communication we have a sender, the person who who's sending the message,
the information.
Then of course you have the message, and then you have the receiver. I mean, this is the way you learn in schools. You have sender, message, and receiver, the person that is receiving the information. So maybe we could talk about the sender in terms of when is I know, positives and negatives, or sending a message, and the person who's doing that, why, what are the reasons behind the urge of talking or communicating or connecting or learning, whatever is the urge, and maybe the other side as well from the
so I think
listening.
As a sender, it's really important to actually send the message, because a lot of the time we keep our needs and wants to ourselves and we fail to communicate them. And what we do instead is expect others to read our minds in a way and to know what we want. And that happens a lot in relationships where we're unable to communicate what we want, because maybe we have this fear that I guess it comes down to like fear of rejection, that our needs will be sort of turned down and we will be hurt, or whatever it is. We are often quite scared to communicate what we want and need.
Sometimes can be as well that we think people think like us or act like us. So we don't say, because for us it's obvious.
It's obvious, right? We've known ourselves, our life. So it's like,
well, it's
of
normal.
course I know what I want. Yeah. Although sometimes we actually don't.
Or I know what the person, of course the person understands what I want. Like, you know, between partners, when you say, but well, it's obvious that I need this. Like, I don't even have to say it. And I mean, the man
like you do, because is like, this person is completely different. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, that just I guess highlights the importance of realizing that we are all different, right? Men and women think completely differently, and even every woman thinks differently to every woman. Obviously there is like a general pattern going on, which comes from, you know, our biology and the way our bodies actually work and have evolved over like thousands of years. But yeah, even individually we're completely different. So we have to be able to actually speak out what we want, because then we're actually giving the other person a chance to meet our needs and wants. And that's one of the, you know, most beautiful things, when someone actually listens to you and wants to actually act out on what they've heard. And when we don't communicate these things, we don't even give other people a chance to make us happy. And yeah, I think the mind reading is just like,
that's another skill.
Because it doesn't happen, you know. It doesn't. Sometimes, you know, people might be similar, but most of the time we're very different.
We are very, I think,
different.
Depends as well on sometimes I think we don't have even clear what we want to communicate ourselves. I don't know if it happened to you, but sometimes it happens. I don't know, replying to a text of somebody sending me something, and then I start to write, okay, I want to say, I'm saying this, and I start to reply, ta, 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 ta. And then after I say, okay, but why am I saying this? What is the objective of what I want to achieve in this communication? Because sometimes we just talk for the sake of talking, like not because we, I don't know, want to really know something, or because we want to, or learn, or because we just need to express something we have inside and we need to take it out. And the moment that we express it, it's like the moment it's like a thought, an idea or something, and the moment we express it, it materializes, and we can see it and we can make sense of it. So and in that sense, it's perfect, because you are kind of trying to go through a process of understanding what that expression
well, actually
means.
there is a difference between men and women here. So generally women, they deal with their problems by talking about them, by verbalizing them. So that's how we kind of, in a way, we digest them, by like talking about them. So that's how we deal with our issues. Whereas men, they keep them to themselves and they think about them. So they're like more logical. And they might need more alone time in order to deal with those things. So, you know, sometimes this is where the communication might go a bit wrong, because a woman is just talking at a man and he's thinking like, you know, like, why don't you shut up? Or like he'll try to give some like a way to solve her problem, but she doesn't need that. She just needs to talk it out. The problem isn't the problem. For her, it's just about verbalizing what she has inside of her. So
it actually happens often that we talk because we don't really need to pass that message to the other person, but it's because we need to listen to ourselves to understand what's going on. So sometimes we just need somebody to be there just listening, because the message is actually for ourselves, it's not for the other person. So
and often when this manifests the other way, for example, so when a woman sees her partner go quiet, and she just won't stop picking like, what's wrong? And she'll ask thousands of questions, not realizing that he just needs some silent time to deal with his issues. So
it makes me think, you know, with The Simpsons, when you are saying like, what are you thinking? Like, I know you're thinking something, and maybe Homer is actually thinking of a donut. Like it's not really.
And she's thinking he's not talking to her because he doesn't love her or has like an affair or something.
Yes. It can be. We are like that.
We are, but it's, you know, it's our biology. So it's, and this is why it's important to know these things, so that we don't take it personally when the other person is not acting the same way as us, because we just work completely differently. So it's important to even, you know, verbalize those things. Like, hey, I just need to vent. Can I just vent? I don't need you to say anything, just like, let me just talk. And, you know, the other person can be like, okay, she just needs to talk. And then that gives you an opportunity to, you know, express all those things, and your need is being met because you're just being listened to. So,
and I'm thinking as well of talking just sometimes, as I was saying, that for the sake of it, in terms of, you know, when you just complain, or you're complaining about something. I mean, it's fine that we complain, although there is no point when you just communicate and talk, because you're complaining, but then you're complaining, but you don't really think to do anything about it. You just want to talk about it and carry on talking about it. And there can be people that, I mean, I'm not saying that I don't complain. Of course I can complain, but that's not the point. That's not the real point of communication. Communication is to, for me, my idea of communication is because there needs to be a final kind of goal, whatever it can be, because I need to listen to myself, because I need to learn about somebody's situation, stories that maybe will help me, because at the end of the day, everything is always about us. in some way. So whatever happens to the other person, if we're listening, is because we're interested to know, and then maybe we can learn from it, or because we want to belong, and so we try to be part of the thing. So it's that kind of
because sometimes we can talk too much, you know. Sometimes we just talk and talk and talk and talk, and we might just want to talk about ourselves only, and it's for the other person and might be quite jarring because they don't even get to say anything themselves and they don't get listened to, and we just sometimes selfishly can expect others to constantly listen to us without acknowledging the other person. So there has to be a balance.
And you can even exaggerate, because when you are at the point of talking and talking and talking, at some point you need to exaggerate something, and then people will not even believe you anymore.
And sometimes people will stop listening because you just talk so much, and then as a result you will feel like you're not being listened to, so that will make you even more talkative, because like, why are you listening to me? I'm trying to tell you something. And so it creates that, you know, feedback loop.
The funny thing is that I think it's important to be aware of ourselves when we are doing this, because I'm a person, I like to talk. and I think it's important to check if you are, I know it's hard, but it's important to check when you're talking maybe too much, and maybe you just need to go to the point and like, what's the concise thing you want to say? Like, be more, concise in that sense. And I think it's important to, be aware of not, or the opposite of not talking too much, because maybe you're not confident enough, or whatever is the reason. And I'm thinking about the sender in terms of, because communication in that sense can be verbal communication, but can be written communication. And sometimes, especially in this social media, I was just thinking of that because we're talking about social media. When you are writing, often in social media, you have, in some platforms, you have a very short space where you want to say something. And sometimes there are topics that are of a certain entity, like things that quite important,
quite deep and
yes,
complex.
and you just have to explain all your thoughts in one paragraph. That, I mean, that would be amazing, especially for somebody who likes to talk a lot, to go straight to the point and say everything in 3 words. But sometimes that's not enough to have a conversation like on this kind of written form.
Yeah, because things can also be taken out of context, and then what we say can be seen in a completely different, you know, view, and can be taken completely the wrong way, and it has the opposite.
Depends on the emotional state of that person, because if I'm particularly frustrated about whatever, even the topic or something that happened at work, and sometimes when we read, because many people don't really like to read much, so you just read like highlight, you know, like scan quickly, oh, that person is saying this, because maybe you are that kind of state. And then in reality, maybe if you read again the same sentence, because the sentence is missing all these beautiful things we were talking about, like body language and tone of the voice and I don't know, and pitch and everything, is missing all these other aspects that make it full and more complete and more full of the proper message, that it can come across completely different.
Yeah, I think this is where in listening it's so important to have an open mind and get rid of any assumptions and expectations of what the other person might already think, because sometimes we just assume things, that this person is the way they are, and this is, you know, because of the way they act, they must be this, because if I was this, then this is how I would be acting. But that might be totally wrong. So when we listen to another person, we might have this assumption of them, so then we will pick out from the things they say to kind of, it's like a confirmation bias where it just confirms what we already believe and disregard everything else that they have said. So when we truly listening, we have to just give up all the assumptions of what we think the other person is trying to say, and make sure that we actually really find out what they are trying to tell us. And if we don't understand something, instead of assuming what they mean, ask them to, verbalize it a bit more in depth, to explain it a bit more. And that will make them feel like they are getting listened to as well.
But that's quite hard, I think, as well to do. The same as being aware of what you say. Because sometimes, we can use all these, we can talk about it and it can be all perfect and beautifully, and you say yes. But then when you're actually there in the moment and you're talking to somebody, if you don't start to get into that exercise of being aware of what you are doing in that moment, and again, it's very hard. Even me, I struggle sometimes. Sometimes I'm good, sometimes I struggle. But to be 1 second, really stop and listen. Because maybe that person has something really important to say, or something that will make you see things in another perspective, or I don't know, something that maybe you will know, maybe you actually will understand the opposite. You will understand, oh, okay, 1 second, here there's an agenda or something that I'm not interested in. But to be completely like a child will be there listening, open and listen. What are you going to tell me? Is it something interesting? Let's listen to it. I think it's very hard, especially nowadays, because nowadays I have this feeling it wasn't like that before. Nowadays is like you need to be talking about the same things, and we all need to think that. And if you see things differently to me, then often people are not that happy to tolerate what you are saying in some way. And they can either dismiss you or, I don't know, bully you or whatever, because you are not thinking like everyone else, or like the mass, or like the kind of right idea or opinion or whatever is in that moment that everybody's agreeing with. And I think this is very dangerous for the whole humanity, actually, because it means that we're not open enough to really listen and have constructive conversations. Because that's the beauty, because we are all different and we're all unique. That means that we should all have different ideas and opinions and thoughts. And if we in a community where everybody has a different opinion, of course there will be debate, but a debate to make things better. In some ways,
things, exactly. It's just, the world would get very stagnant if everyone thought the same, because there would be no new innovation, there would be no creativity, there would be no new anything.
We'd die.
And it's just not reality. There is no way that everyone can think the same, because we don't. We can only assume that, we think the same, but deep down we all have these personal inklings, and our perception is always colored by our own unique experiences of life, and that's not necessarily what the other person has experienced. So their perception of reality is never going to be the same as ours. And so even if it might seem, okay, yeah, the person has the same point of view on the subject as me, they might actually see it from a completely different point of view. It's just that it appears as if they do, right? Because you agree on certain points. But the whole, if you consider like all the other aspects of the beliefs of that person, they might be completely different. And that's not a bad thing.
It makes me think of, years and years ago, the people that changed things were the people that were completely like kind of solos, voices amongst like people that were thinking the same thing. And those
even in spirituality, all prophets are pretty much hated by the people in their age. They usually have like a few followers, and then the whatever religion will grow over time. But at the time they were like, nobody thought like that. So it's important to have unique ideas and not fear to express them and communicate them to others. That's why it's so important for us to pay attention especially when someone has a different point of view, because we might really learn a lot from what they are saying.
Mm-hmm. And it's not, I think it's a balance, because it's not that you have to think like different from everyone else all the time, not. But, and of course you have people that they can support your ideas or anything, but actually opposite ideas can inspire you, can make you see things in another way, or it can strengthen your point of view on certain things. But I think it's time to find a balance between like being still truthful to yourself and what you think is right or not in your development and in all your growing your own ideas about anything or any concept, but while you're still part of the community, of course, because you need to interact. That's why we need a community to debate, to be a constructive debate, of course,
and to grow things, right? To grow the ideas further and to actually make things happen. And I think this also ties into what we were talking about in the previous episode, where we were talking about intuition and our own unique voice of guidance. And that is not necessarily the same as that of the crowd, for example. So are we able to silence ourselves and silence the whole world in order to listen to the, you know, the voice of our soul and God, and to really hear this you know, intuition? Or do we just only look for information outside of ourselves, and then that way, you know, we only get what other people are putting out, which is never the full story anyway?
Yeah, and actually silence makes me think of, silence is kind of part of communication too, because you don't necessarily have to use words to communicate, but you can use silence to communicate. And I think we miss a lot of silence often, because we are living in a society where everything is about now, buy things now online, you can buy and receive it on the same day. Everything is about you know, hurry and busy and all this stuff that in some way is amazing, but the fact that we are losing this skill and ability to kind of slow down,
be in silence and just enjoy the moment. I think one of the, you know, most special moments you can have with people is to just, you know, sit in a silence, like comfortable silences from Pulp Fiction. You know, it's like it's that feeling of contentment with the moment as it is, and there's no more to add, and just that, you know, just being in the present moment in complete silence and just enjoying that moment, enjoying the energy, and just enjoying the presence of another person can mean so much more sometimes than just, you know, trying to think of something to say for the sake of breaking the silence. Because a lot of people, when they have a lot of like worry and anxiety and insecurity about themselves, they will constantly want to talk because they're afraid of that silence, because they're like, you know, is that person like, do they not like me because they're not saying anything? And sometimes the silences can be like one of the most wonderful things, you know, when you're just content.
Being able to be in silence with yourself, I think is actually, because as you were saying, when we're communicating, when the other person, if there is a moment of silence, it's like you need to feel the urge. I remember I had this conversation with Richard about the fact that having this silence, sometimes you need to feel the urge to fill up that gap. You have to talk, you have to say it, while instead of stopping and pausing 1 second and maybe gathering your thoughts again, or being able to stop. Like imagine a moment of you are arguing with a person and you are getting into that fiery thing and you are angry and starting to get bigger and bigger. If we could stop while you're doing that for a few seconds, stop, it can help to, okay, 1 second, what's going on? What's the real thing? And you can be in control. Like with my husband, we do this. We don't really argue, to be honest, but when it happens, we have like certain conversations and we start to be agitated about something, and or I'm very angry about something, or he's a bit upset, then we say, you know what, let's take 5 minutes, because, and that helps, because then the emotion is not taking over. You 1 second calm down and you can really talk with a clearer mind because you stopped. And it does work. It works because we do it when it happens. And it's completely different outcome than when you actually are like a roller coaster with this, like the emotion and the anger and blah, blah, blah. And then you become, your brain become fogged. You don't see, you don't understand.
Yeah.
So I think stop, silence is as you were saying before, intuition. I think silence, in terms of stopping, you can actually receive more, because you are
Exactly.
you are open and you receive and you understand and you see clearer.
And it's our inability to be okay with silence that leads us into this overconsumption of social media. And, you know, because sometimes it's like we will be bored, and instead of just enjoying the moment and enjoying the silence, whether it's, I don't know, riding in a car, or, well, you kind of have to concentrate on the road, but but I don't know, let's say on the train or public transport, or maybe you're just sitting in the park or waiting in a queue, and you could just easily stop and just enjoy the moment, enjoy the silence, and be okay with that. You know, not having like a input, like a sensory input in any information coming in. So we're unable to do that. So the first thing we do is reach for the phone and check the email, or check Instagram, or, you know, go on YouTube and watch a quick video because we have like 15 minutes to spare. And so we're constantly taking in information. And actually, when we are constantly doing that, our brains need pause. They need a break when it comes to taking in information in order to actually assimilate what we have taken in. So if we have a morning where, I don't know, we listen to like some interviews or read a book, it might be really useful to just take like a 20-minute walk and just don't listen to anything. Don't put in earphones, don't call anybody, just walk and think about what you have just heard, and actually try to assimilate that information. Because unless you do that, it will come in and then you will forget it, and then it just won't sink in. So
and thanks God we sleep and we have to stop in some way. But exactly. I think it's important that we consciously stop as well, because that what makes things kind of happen. It makes me think as well of parents. I often hear parents, and I mean, and this is part of the society where we live. I often hear parents saying, oh, to little, very young children, like 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, a bit older. Oh, I don't know, my child gets bored and I need to give him something to do. So they overload these children with toys and apps and things to do on the internet. So they are constantly busy. But they don't realize that doing this actually are not helping them to develop the skill of learning how. Actually, they have this skill, because many children I work with, they are so patient. They can be so patient. Like an adult cannot be like a child like that. Honestly, I have children that we're doing, like, sometimes we go to the forest, and not sometimes, every week we do like forest school. And I have children where they are working with certain activities and they have to wait for their turn. And you see them sitting there nicely, even for half an hour, even for 45 minutes. Children, they are 3 years old, okay? Waiting and maybe playing around with the stick in the soil, but waiting. And then when it's their turn, they go and they do it. So they know they have this ability. And when I was a child, I remember there was a period of my life where I was at home with my brother and my sister, and we And I think that was the best period of my life, because we moved into this new house. We didn't have many toys. Actually, we used to come from, when we used to live in South America, we had lots of toys and lots of things, and we were like very like wealthy. And then we moved and completely changed our life. And we were, we started to invent our own toys, because the boredom, like the moments that you are bored, are the moments where you have the greatest ideas.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Bored, and you are like, there were moments we were like, what to do, blah blah blah, and then you think, I have a piece of paper, I have colors, what can I make? I'll make a TV. And you're like, what? Yeah, let's make a TV. So it's like, you have the most amazing things happening when you are bored. So I think parents should understand this concept and leave children to find their things as well, because they will support children to learn about themselves.
Yeah.
It's like you learn, I didn't know I was able to be, I was so creative and I could do all this stuff. And
using our actual imagination, you know, it happens when we're bored, because when we have all these stuff, we're not using our imagination. We're just, you know, taking in sensory input. But in order to put something out and make something creative, we need to use our imagination. And I actually, what you said made me think of when I was little and I was playing with my brother. We had a lot of toys, but sometimes our favorite thing to do was to just do pretend play and don't use any toys. We would just pretend to be like different characters. And that was the best thing, because we were using our imagination. It's like we were creating this whole new reality that we were living in.
Interacting.
And, yeah, and we were interacting with each other. And, you know, it was just so magical, because it was so fun, and we didn't need any of the toys, you know. So sometimes it would just be like a dialogue, and we would just, you know, pretend to be these characters. And when I think about it, it was, you know, it was so fun. And kids like now, when they have all these things, they don't do that. And it's so important for our development. Everything it starts with the imagination.
Yeah, it does. It's so important. I have children that actually not too long ago, I had this child that was having a toilet roll. There were two, and all of a sudden there were two children, and they took this toilet roll. They started to cut and tried it like many attempts until they managed to solve their problems and make it real. And they actually made this kind of bands, kind of.
Yeah.
And they color it, and they started to be superheroes, and they were playing for I don't know how long, just with the toilet roll in their hands, pretending they were superheroes, and they were rolling and doing stuff and having so much fun. And that is the best, honestly. You don't need to bombard children with all these toys and stuff. Leave them in silence and see what happens. Magic happens. Even for us adults, magic happens. In silence and don't talk. Can you imagine like being two people in front of each other, just looking at each other?
It's just
come up. That is,
yeah.
I'm going to try that experiment. I'm going
Yeah.
to tell but yeah, so we talked a lot today about communication. I think we went through different aspects of communication in general. So maybe we can start to conclude and taking down the blindfolds.
Yes.
And maybe as we used to do now, we talk, maybe do like a little summary and talk about the negative aspects of communication, and then end with the positive ones. So in terms of negatives, we were talking about the dangers of social media in terms of communication and these kind of addictions and this kind of virtual world that is it doesn't really reflect reality, or at least can reflect the negative sides of reality.
Yeah.
And then what else did we say about negative?
We're talking about misunderstandings between people and assumptions that people are the way we think they are, or they are just like us, when in reality they're completely different. And yeah, sometimes we can talk too much and don't listen, and sometimes we can, just expect people to read our minds because we have a fear of speaking out about our needs.
Yes. And then positive sides of communication, well, is important because, as we said, the communication we needed to express, especially when we really express our personalities, our uniqueness, and the importance of in the communication of silence and to stop, but as well to be able then to express your ideas and thoughts to the point, or to promote your product, idea, project, or anything, but as well to be on the other side and be able to listen, try to don't judge or have prejudices or anything, and just properly listen. And importance as well of when you communicate in a group, to have constructive debates and search and look for diversity and people that think differently than you, because that's the way, I think, to have to bring some growth in our lives.
Definitely. And also obviously connection and things like that on a more personal level. To communicate and just be able to grow your friendships and relationships and your ideas and your projects as much as possible.
In the next episode, I think part 2, we will talk about another aspect of expressing ideas.
Yes, there was just so much to the subject. We had to split into 2 parts.
But I hope people enjoy this episode and there was something interesting to take from it.
Yeah, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yes. Okay. Bye.
Bye.